Badlands, running to Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
I don't consider myself a conspiracy buff at all, but when they get a lot of coincidences, I get a little suspicious and call me crazy.
Polls, weird talk shows, crazy groups every Sunday telling you what you think.
The Republicans and the Democrats conspire with one another, which they do.
There is a conspiracy by big business against American democracy.
We know that there was a conspiracy.
There was a conspiracy.
There was no conspiracy.
Was there a conspiracy?
It's a communist conspiracy directed out of Moscow.
The right-wing conspiracy.
Communist conspiracy is a deliberate and predictable plan of action to subvert the world.
Right-wing conspiracy.
International criminal conspiracy.
Vast right-wing conspiracy.
Great conspiracy.
There are all these conspiracy theories.
Was there a conspiracy? I don't know.
Perhaps themselves even involved in the conspiracy.
There was a conspiracy.
No evidence
of a conspiracy.
Anybody would have to be a fool nowadays to dismiss conspiracies.
Conspiracy theory.
Cockeyed conspiracy theory.
Conspiracy theory exists because there really is conspiracy.
But they never told a soul about it. In fact, they engaged in a vast conspiracy.
Since you get accused of being a conspiracy theorist, of being a paranoid.
The historical context of actual conspiracy.
A conspiracy of bad people.
As always happens at some point in a conspiracy. One night, Cousin Eddie got drunk in a honky-tonk and spilled the beans.
There was a conspiracy and government was involved in it.
Conspiracy existing within the United States government.
There was a conspiracy.
A
conspiracy by the CIA.
The conspiracy of a few.
Dark, secretive, conspiratorial, evil.
Then it was certainly a deliberate conspiracy.
High-level conspiracy.
The do's and the don'ts and the rights and the wrongs of the various conspiracy theories that are good.
Possibility of a conspiracy. In a moral sense, I think it was a conspiracy.
One conspiracy, that's all I'm talking about.
Full of speculation, conspiracy theories, and the like. And what's going on here?
You began to wonder what was really happening in America. I mean, was there a vast conspiracy afoot? You know, there could have been a conspiracy.
Do you think you're obsessed with conspiracy?
Conspiracy theory.
A conspiracy.
I'm afraid you'll catch me. I'm afraid you'll catch me.
A conspiracy would do the job nicely.
I declare bankruptcy!
Sorry, I just wanted to set the mood. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Baseless Conspiracies. Zach, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I feel like a dick. I missed your birthday. I missed Brad's birthday too, apparently.
Wait, when was Brad's birthday?
I guess his birthday was in the last couple of days. I saw Abby wishing him a happy birthday on Twitter.
Today?
Not today. I mean, like it was like over the weekend. But I didn't know. I was prepared to do a mea culpa for Brad's birthday. But then I saw somebody in the chat ask if you had a good birthday, and I was like, I'm a bad friend.
Yeah, you should apologize. Let's hear it.
Well, John, I sincerely apologize for missing your birthday.
I'm just kidding.
I know you are, but still, I'm sorry. I'll
okay.
Now I'll make sure that it's like in my phone.
You know, it's cool and all. Like I've never been a big birthday guy though. Like I don't see it as that like a special day. I don't really do anything crazy. We went out to eat with my family last night, but we went to the arcade so my kids could play games. Like it made about them, not me. So
yeah. I mean, I was raised Jehovah's Witness, so I never celebrated a birthday.
Is that true or is that
no? That's not true.
Okay,
that was a joke.
I wasn't sure. I didn't want to say anything insensitive.
We didn't have television either.
Is that true though? They don't.
No, they don't. No, they don't celebrate birthday. They don't celebrate. They don't watch television. I don't think they have Christmas either.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But next year for my birthday, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call them and be like, I'd like to hear about our Lord and Savior. Could you guys come by on this day and then like have it just be a big birthday party and have them come celebrate a birthday? That's what I'm going to do.
Make sure you bring the most recent copy of the Watchtower.
The what?
the Watchtower. That's their magazine. That's the magazine they pass out. I guess I don't even know if they produce it anymore. That was like their thing. They would come around and be like, "Can I talk to you about our Lord and Savior?" And I'd be like, "Oh yeah, sure." And then they'd pull out the Watchtower, and I'd be like, "Hold on, I know where you're from. No, I'm good. I already know about it."
Speaking of people showing up at your door, I feel really guilty about this. So I don't know why I'm saying it, but I've been expecting the packages for our merch that I'm bringing down to Deadwood.
Ooh.
And so the doorbell rang earlier this evening, and I go to answer, like, oh, the merch is here finally. And it was some person, I don't even remember what charity they were selling raffle tickets for. But I was like, oh man, I'm strapped. Have you seen the economy today? Like, come back tomorrow around this exact time, and I'll get one for me tomorrow. But my original plan was I wasn't going to answer the door then. But now I feel like since I've told the story, I have to. Because now saying it, I feel like a dick. So now I'm gonna have to buy a ticket.
So you let them in, and you just be like, you don't mind if I record the conversation, do you? And just turn on the camera and then make a video out of it.
Ticket. Raffle tickets are so expensive these days too. I remember when I was in school, they were $2 a ticket we would sell.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Catholic school, but okay.
I remember selling those candy bars.
No, we never sold the candy bars.
You never sold the candy bars? Oh my god.
No.
That was like the best part. Like it was like a good sized candy bar. Now, like I want to say they were $1, maybe $2. And now like one of those candy bars, it's like $5 to $10, and it's like a very thin line of chocolate.
It's inflation, man.
Oh my god, yes.
Like, do you snort it or what?
Snort the chocolate.
You said very thin line. I don't know.
It's a solid piece of chocolate. So no, you're not snorting it, but oh my god. All right. And somebody asked about my magic underwear. That's the Mormons. So as far as I know, Jehovah's Witnesses don't have magic underwear.
Magic underwear. The Mormons.
Well, I mean, that's the joke. I mean, and I'm sorry if anybody's Mormon, but there is like a special garb that they wear when they go into their ceremonies. And to be perfectly honest with you, the reason that I don't know the appropriate name is because it's rather secretive.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one time we upset and offended all the Scientologists?
Oh God, yes. I definitely remember that. Anytime you bring up Scientology, I think
Zorg, yes. Or whatever his name is.
Xenu.
Oh yeah, so, Zorg's like.
This is the funny part. Isn't Zord Power Rangers?
Oh, maybe. No. What's Toy Story?
Toy Story. Oh God,
isn't that Zorg?
Oh, that could be. Oh, I thought you said Zord. But either way, Zorg, maybe. Toy Story. I can't remember.
I don't know.
But here's the question. This is what I always wonder, because, you know, I mean, it's all good. It's all fun and games until somebody brings up Xenu. And, you know, either there really is people who are Scientologists who are watching the show and like they're on board with everything until we poke a little bit of fun, or Scientology is paying to have people monitor the internet. When something is brought up, then they know to bring the outrage mob. Like, I think that we actually got more hate for the South Park sketch than we did for the entire L. Ron Hubbard episode.
Yeah, that's for sure. That was like the worst hate email I think I've ever received.
Yeah. And I've gotten a couple of them over the years. You know, if I said, and I've just like mentioned Scientology in passing, and I didn't say anything specific, and I really tried not to for a while because I was just like, geez, oh Pete's like, calm down. But, you know, just bringing it up and having people like email me very upset. And I was just like, you know, this seems like it's more of like an intimidation campaign than it is an organic response. So, and then we did that episode on L. Ron Hubbard, and it's quite obvious, like they have like state sponsored terror type tactics.
Yeah. That's very true. A couple notes here. Zorg is from Toy Story. That's some good confirmation.
Okay.
We are live on Kick, and we have 19 people watching over there.
What's up, Kick?
Awesome.
President Trump was live on Kick today.
Yeah. I signed up for Kick the second they launched because it's like finally a Twitch competitor. And that's where I started, was over on Twitch. And then they demonetized like all my friends. So I left. But then I couldn't figure out how to get StreamYard to connect with it. And then I figured out it was something in the code or whatever. And so I finally got it working. So we have like almost 100 followers over there. Kind of cool. And then another question from the chat. Did Lisa give you back your hard drive?
Lisa did not give me back my hard drive, but Lisa never took my hard drive.
That you know of.
That I know of. And I'm pretty certain because there's nothing in it for her to take that hard drive. And to be fair, I don't know what would be in it for anybody to take that hard drive. But the hard drive is still missing, and all of that data is still gone.
That is a bummer.
It is a bummer. Yeah.
And apparently you really actually say Jizo Pete's in real life.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
it
anyway, we're going to talk about some of the economy stuff and maybe who knows what else. And then we're going to talk about John Wayne Gacy tonight. And Zach is going to prove that he is not a serial killer. Is that?
No, he was just a misunderstood clown. That was it. No, John Wayne Gacy is definitely a serial killer. However, he's not one of those lone wolf types that they love to attribute to somebody in his position. And, considering the fact that he was openly gay, I think that there's also a segment of the public that would like to kind of just absolve John Wayne Gacy of all of his crimes. Because I actually found this kind of crazy post from this Antifa guy. And he was asking questions about John Wayne Gacy and a couple of serial pederasts and other serial killers that were associated with him. And he was uncomfortable with the truth of these people all having connections, because John Wayne Gacy was gay. And I don't want to go QAnon on this stuff because it, reflects poorly on the gay community. Okay, well, you could be gay and you don't have to fucking rape little kids. All right. It's a totally different thing. Totally different.
That's a valid point. You make a valid point, sir. But we'll get to that. Let's hear from our sponsors of tonight's show real quick.
Oh, great.
First.
Perfect segue. Sorry.
Okay. Can you do a monologue on rainbows and butterflies real quick, and then we'll hear from our sponsors?
So either way, I had a really good weekend, John. I bet you did too. I'm really looking forward to this storm surge that's coming over Florida. Hurricane Debbie. Luckily, it didn't go for Texas. It went to Florida.
Who gets to name hurricanes, by the way? Who's the deciding authority on that?
I mean, maybe NOAA, but I know that they just go through the alphabet, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association. I think they start with A, and they for every tropical storm and in hurricane, tropical storm, typhoon, hurricane, they just go through the list. And so D, Debbie, this is just, where we're at for 2024. So, we're over halfway through the year, so it seems kind of uneventful.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, you learn something new every day. Now we'll get a quick word from the sponsors of tonight's show. First up, we got Easy RX. We'd like to thank the folks at Easy RX for sponsoring our show tonight. They've helped so many Badlanders get the medications they need without breaking the bank. As 2024 fires up for the summer and seems to be a rerun of 2020, it's the perfect time to stock up on the suppressed medications and get your family ready for anything that they might throw at us. EasyRx has a wide variety of high-quality medications like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, fenbendazole, and so many more. The fake news is getting more exposed every single day. People are waking up to the truth about their health and many inexpensive life-saving medications. You can find them all at EasyRx. The process is simple, the shipping is fast, and prices are unbeatable. You can breathe easy knowing that you and your family are prepared for anything. Don't wait any longer. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/EasyRx. Use promo code Badlands for 10% off your purchase of $150 or more. That's badlandsmedia.tv/EasyRx, promo code Badlands. I think being prepared, that's the key phrase there. We don't know what's going to happen. You got to have your food supply, your weapons, ammo, Bitcoin, all that stuff. Make sure you get those hard to find medications as well. And then do you have something to say? Otherwise, you got one more sponsor.
Well, I was just going to say, Susan Boosin, she said my boyfriend was the only known survivor of a John Wayne Gacy kidnapping. I'm pretty sure I'm going to talk about him on the show tonight. So, there's only one name of a person who was kidnapped by John Wayne Gacy and then got away. And so I'm already planning to discuss that case tonight. So Susan, I guess maybe
your boyfriend.
Yeah. I don't know that you should have said that out loud, but if you can put me in touch with him, geez, oh Pete's, that's insane.
That's good. We need a geez, oh Pete's counter because now I can't unsee it every time you say it.
It's better than taking the name of the Lord in vain over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about taking the name of Xenu in vain?
I don't know. I don't know what the equivalent would be.
I'm fishing right now. I'm just fishing. Okay. Anyway, second sponsor of today's show, we got CB Distillery. Let me guess, guys, your medicine cabinet is full of stuff that doesn't work. Those Tylenols, those Advils. You still aren't sleeping, you still hurt, you're still stressed out. That's how it was for me. So I cleared out my cabinet and reset my health with CBD from CB Distillery. It's been a real change. CB Distillery's targeted formulations are made from the highest quality clean ingredients. No fluff, no fillers, just pure, effective CBD solutions designed to help support your health. In 2 non-clinical surveys, 81% of customers experienced more calm. 80% said CBD helped with pain after physical activity. And an impressive 90% said they slept better on CBD. So if you struggle with any of those health concerns, you haven't found relief yet, make the change like I did to CB Distillery. With over 2 million customers and a solid 100% money-back guarantee, CB Distillery is a source you can trust. You can get 20% off your first order with go to cbdistillery.com, use promo code Baseless for 20% off. That's cbdistillery.com, promo code Baseless. Support Badlands and this show specifically. All right, before we get into John Wayne Gacy and S. Buson's boyfriend, let's talk about the economy, because woke up this morning. It wasn't even this morning. It was last night before bed. The Japan markets opened up, and they had on the 31st, they had raised their interest rates. And that was like Friday, I think, right before the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then shit hit the fan starting last night. And when our markets open, shit hit the fan even more. And everything like tanked. Crypto, the stock market, pretty much everything was down except for, I think, Trump's DJ Trump stock.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember which military company.
Oh, Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin skyrocketed, dude.
And that was because of the war that's about to take place.
Yes, yes.
Well, there's like potentially 3 world wars about to kick off. You have the Russia, Ukraine, China, Taiwan situation, and the Middle East. So crazy shit, man.
So, what was also crazy about it is that Warren Buffett, in the weeks before this market crash, did the biggest sell-off of the last couple of years. And so now he's got major cash reserves. He took massive profits on so many stocks. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the largest cash reserve that his company, Berkshire Hathaway, has held at any one time. So
230 some billion or something?
277. Jeez. Yeah. So you got to ask the question, I mean, obviously Warren Buffett plays the market. I mean, he's paying attention to indicators and stuff. But man, that dude just was right on the money with that stuff. What else was interesting is that although institutional investors still had access, many of them were trying to dump their stocks and get out. Retail investors were shut out of their applications and their accounts, like across the board, like Robinhood, TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab. Like I saw this series of tweets, like all of these people, just regular people. They're like, hey, I just want to look at my portfolio, or maybe I want to sell some of my stuff before I take too big of a bath. And they had no explanation for it. They were just like, sorry, we're down. Can't help it. You get screwed.
Yeah, I like big baths, but not this kind of big bath. But I think the most interesting thing for me to see was the Bitcoin situation, because that was, I think it's down below 50,000 now, which is pretty remarkable. The way I've been thinking about this, like, why is this happening with the Bitcoin? Because it's kind of supposed to be, it's not a hedge. It's not, but it gets treated like a hedge. But it seems like, I don't know if it was the people online, because I did see a bunch of Twitter posts like, it might not be a bad idea to go to your bank and get some cash out tomorrow. Saw that from a few decently big size accounts. And if they're locked out of their, trading accounts or whatever it is, and everybody sees it going down, you start panicking and sell. But like, to me, it's like buying opportunity. It's cheaper now. I can get more for less. I'm loving it. So,
well, I'm just waiting for it to go back to 20.
Yeah, well, I hope it doesn't quite go that far.
Well, I mean, Bitcoin's had like a couple of big cyclical dips like that. I think it's inevitable. It's going to happen again. But I still don't have any of my money back from my original crypto, and that's the only thing that I've been waiting for, is to get that money back.
You never will.
No, I'm so pissed. I'm about ready to go find Alex Mashinsky. He was the CEO of Celsius, who took all of our crypto and went to Israel.
So you're going to go to Israel and find him?
No, I mean, he was extradited back. Well, I mean, he wasn't extradited. I think the Israeli government made a deal with the United States, because there's no extradition from U.S. to Israel. But they forced him to come back so that he could go on trial. Now I think he's selling cars or something like that. So maybe I just have to go take a test drive.
Yeah, I lied. People in the chat were saying I thought it went below 50, and that's the last time I saw. And maybe it never got that low, but it was like head that way. But it's at 50. It's almost at 56. It's up a little bit. So a little misinformation. My bad, guys. But still, it's been interesting to see. Like, it's kind of hard to justify voting for a member of the current administration, the Democrat Party, their ideologies, when this is what the economy's doing, and then the world what's going on in the world stage with the Middle East popping off, and then going on in Europe too. We're basically having a race war, or whatever you said before the show, religious war.
Yes.
I mean, it's insane. All these bad things that are happening, and I don't remember any of this ever happening under Trump. Like, how can anybody justify it?
No, and Trump even predicted it. I mean, he said all the gains that we've been able to achieve, they're all going to get wiped out.
Yep,
and
I actually
it's happening.
Have that clip. Oh, I don't have it pulled up, but I can get it pulled up.
Go for it.
I was never in this for the money. But it turns out that the money was an absolute necessity for me.
I'm waiting to load, so I'm just playing all my Michael Scott clip.
Never buy a fur coat with a credit card until you absolutely have the money to pay for it.
Okay,
I have seen more of The Office on this network than I have seen like organically. I haven't ever seen any of these episodes that you keep showing.
What?
Yeah, I've told you, man. I never watched The Office America. I watched The Office UK like years ago. And then they made the American version, and I didn't have cable. And so, like, I didn't go seek it out or anything.
I'm so disappointed. Like, I don't know if I can do a show with you anymore.
Oh, come on.
You've never seen The Office.
I mean, I've seen a couple of select episodes, but I couldn't tell you which. I mean, there's like 12 seasons or something like that. Or, I mean, are they still ongoing?
No, they're done. They've been done for a while.
How many seasons do they have?
Oh man, I think they did 10.
Okay, all right. So yeah, there's a lot of episodes there. But again, I didn't have cable. So how am I supposed to watch it?
I don't know. I mean, I don't even think it's not on Netflix.
I don't really watch a lot of comedy, to be honest with you.
Is it because you don't have a sense of humor? Gee, I can't believe you don't like The Office.
That's not it. I just I think that The Office is just a little obvious.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Can't believe you said that, bro.
I mean, it's funny in just there. It's got a particular flavor to it. All right,
I agree.
It's an acquired taste,
and it's one of those like the first time you sit through and watch The Office, it's good, but the second time it's better. And like every time you rewatch this series, which I've done multiple times, like I did a long time ago. I haven't watched through it all in like a couple of years now, but I used to just play it on repeat, and it was the funniest. It just gets funnier and funnier. It's one of those things, and so whatever, it's okay. But I do have that Trump clip that I'll play now.
Okay.
Now that we're done stalling.
All of this incredible job that we've done will go down like that. It will be a terrible, terrible sight. It might even be a 1929 situation, so you have a chance to have the greatest numbers in history. You're almost there. We're almost back to where we were from the standpoint of the stock market. Think of that. But you'll have a crash like you've never seen before. You put the wrong person in office, you'll see things that you would not have believed are possible.
So what's really interesting is that a lot of people criticized Trump during his time in office, saying that he manipulated the stock market to make it as successful as it was. And I'm not arguing. I think that he did. But what's even greater is that I think the Biden regime manipulated it even worse, during this entire time, because all economic indicators should have pushed this to the brink a long time ago. Like, this crash should have come much, much earlier. And the economy is just terrible. Inflation is out of control, hundreds of % increases on so many necessary things that you got to buy on a daily basis. And I think that literally they've just gotten to the point where everything is crumbling all at the same time, and there's no way that they can stop it. And so here we are. It's right before the election. People are going to say what you just said. I mean, you look back at President Trump's time in office, despite everything they did during the pandemic, he was still able to bring our country back from the edge of destruction. And, we hit $35 trillion deficit under Biden. The stock market's crashing. Crypto is crashing. We're on the verge of multiple world wars. Those countries that are involved in the wars are shutting the Biden regime out. Like Israel didn't tell the Biden company that they were going to hit the Hamas leader because they didn't want it to leak back to Hamas. But then at the same time, there's also discussion that perhaps someone within the Iranian government gave Israel the information so that they could just get rid of that guy and they wouldn't have to keep playing around and acting like they cared about him. But, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think it's unlikely that Israel and Iran will get into a real war. I think that for both of their purposes, it's far more beneficial to have the appearance of likelihood with a war. Like they can just posture back and forth. Iran, for all they've done and all the attempts they've made to try to get the bomb, I don't think that they've done it yet. And, it's just bad for the region if they do start launching nukes. So a couple of select missiles back and forth. It's like when President Trump hit Soleimani, or maybe it was a different bombing, but they called him and they were like, "Oh, we got to hit you back." Because it was all about ego. It was about the way they appeared on the world stage. So they said, hey, we're going to hit something that's totally benign and you just need to act like you're really pissed. And he was like, I get it. Go ahead.
That story was crazy too, because they shot at a military base and there were no casualties.
Yep.
But some people did get concussions and PTSD and headaches and stuff.
Okay.
And the media went all out on Trump over that story. That was like a year or two ago.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you brought that up. But yeah, they told him in advance they were going to do it, but they didn't want to get the retaliation for their retaliation. So that's why they did it that way. But from what you said before about manipulating the market, Trump certainly did that. I think a lot of the people do. And it's more amazing that Trump was able to do it because he did it with the hostile media.
Exactly.
It's much easier to manipulate the appearance of the economy and pretty much anything in general when you have the propagandists and the media on your side.
Right.
But then what's even more fascinating, the other layer to this is during COVID, all the bad things that we have going on right now, you can trace back to COVID started and it was Trump's moves, like rolling the Fed into the Treasury and all those shenanigans. That is kind of what has led us, and the printing of money and everything, to this current situation we're in right now. So not only did he manipulate it to make his economy look even better, even some of those the gas deals that he negotiated with it was Russia and Saudi Arabia to keep the gas prices low during COVID. Brilliant. And then they've gone up since then. But it was that ticking time bomb that there was no amount of media propaganda that could cover up for. Like, they did a good job for about 3 years, even though people were feeling it. They were gaslighting us. Bidenomics is working and inflation is down, 50%, or really it's the rate that inflation is going up is down 50%. Total bullshit. But it's like reached its head, and I think it's going to get worse still.
Oh yeah, no, 100% it is, and I totally agree with you. I think that he basically set a trap for them so that it would implode at some point before his time to return. So now he gets to come back, he gets to fix all that stuff, and hopefully we'll do a permanent solution after he returns, and then we won't have to keep going through these cycles every 4 to 8 years. But yes, I think you're absolutely right. It was intentional.
Yep.
Yeah. And the Biden regime, I don't think that they were smart enough to know what he did. I think that they walked in and they were like, we're just going to take credit for everything good and we'll just keep moving forward and we'll keep lining our pockets. And then, eventually shit will go bad, but, we'll just act like we know what we're doing. And here we are. And they have no.
And just keep straight up lying about everything. Another crazy thing, a story that came out this week, and then we can get into the topic here. Apparently our government has sent like $230 million to terrorists overseas.
Yeah, like $44 million a week.
Which is not, could you imagine, Zach, if I sent even $100 overseas to a terrorist organization,
you go
what
to
the
prison.
Government would do to me?
Yeah.
But instead we pay taxes and they just do it. $44 million a week.
Yes.
Directly to terrorists.
Yeah. What's crazy is this has actually come out some time ago, but it just was said multiple times. And then finally somebody put it together. I think it was Sean Ryan. He put it together in that clip and then released it. And, you know, obviously now it's just a little bit more impactful. It hits a little different considering the position that we're in as a nation and the idea that we're just going to continue to pay people to not blow us up, while at the same time they can blow us up because we also gave them $80 billion worth of artillery.
Yeah, it's insanity.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, buckle up. It's going to get crazier. We'll see. Who knows? But I anticipate it's going to get crazier because things have to get worse so that the disparity between Trump winning the election and them stealing it for Kamala or whoever the candidate ends up being, it has to be that big. Like there has to be it has to be so obvious that nobody voted for the current administration or the candidate that it's got to get worse. So,
I mean, also on that note, we talked about this before the show, but Trump's sentencing in New York is like September 13th. And I'm fully expecting Marshawn to put him in jail. And can you imagine the groundswell of support that people would rally around Trump if for the last 45 days of the election season, he's in a New York jail cell. He's in the MDC. All right. And he's like calling Sean Hannity or Steve Bannon because Steve gets out and he's like, you know, I can put something on my commissary, Steve. And he's doing interviews from the jail, you know, and like JD Vance is out doing rallies every day, going different places all around the country. We must elect President Trump so we can set him free. I mean, talk about Nelson Mandela, man. It would be incredible.
I understand what you're saying, but I think because of the assassination attempt, and by the way, I did see a rant here. Since the attempt, this is from 2812 VPJ. Since the attempt on Trump's life, the entire world is on fire. The cornered beast. Tell me this isn't spiritual. But that made me think what that rant said and what you said.
Mm-hmm.
If they do sentence him, I don't know how it would happen, but clearly the Secret Service can't be trusted to protect him in a prison, right?
Well,
and so how does that work?
So here's the thing. President Trump, first of all, he would not be in Gen Pop. Okay. He wouldn't be surrounded by other inmates. He wouldn't be in daily contact with them unless he requests it. And there's a possibility he may be like, you know, I want you to like, you know, have people around me so that, you know, just for the optics of it. But I mean, he would be in his own little dedicated area, or they may have like a wing that like is sealed off and they put like a portable or something like that, just something to house him in that is separate from Gen Pop. And then he would have a contingent of Secret Service agents, like the people who have been around him for years that he actually trusts. And they would be there with him. They would probably do 2 shifts, one during the day, one at night. And, you know, the real problem here is the low level guys who can be bought. All right. And then the higher level mid managers and leadership at the Secret Service. So in a manner of speaking, it's going to put him into a position where it's going to be it's a situation that you're going to be able to predict every single day. Okay. Because it's going to be regimented. It's going to be highly regulated, and you're not going to be able to have anybody, you know, trying to pick him off from a high vantage point. Okay. You're not going to have people coming around him and trying to shank him. You're going to have a situation that's going to be highly controlled. And so those people that would be around him would be people that President Trump would be comfortable with. I think that core group that surrounds the president are people that he trusts. But the people who are like high level, you know, those are the ones who are making decisions and saying, you know, all of these areas that should be covered, we're not going to cover them. Or, you know, when you're on your way with President Trump, we're going to leave this entryway open, and then a car is going to come out onto the freeway and try to run him off the road. I mean, those are the things you got to worry about.
Yeah, I could see them definitely sentencing him and trying to actually put him in prison.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it actually. I don't see him actually going into a prison cell. I could see like a house arrest of some sort somewhere,
yes,
like Mar-a-Lago or whatever.
Might be
to prevent him from campaigning. But I would be shocked if he actually went to prison. But who knows at this point? Like there's been things I've said in the past where I was like, "There's no way that's going to happen."
Yeah,
and it certainly did happen. So.
That's the thing. I mean, I think that we have to remain open for absolutely anything to occur, right? Yeah. I mean, like, I think it would be a shock to the system no matter what. but I don't put anything past them. I think that they're perfectly willing to do the unexpected. And if they think that that's going to be their best move, then they're going to go ahead and do it. I mean, does anybody here believe that Judge Marchand would have any compunction at all about putting President Trump into any form of incarceration? I mean, he stacked that trial against President Trump so obviously. Now, what he may do is sentence him and then give him a reporting date, and then President Trump immediately appeals it, and then he remains free pending appeal as the case goes on. You know, and so maybe that takes it just beyond the election. I mean, we're going to be cutting it really, really close here. So, you know, I feel like they're desperate enough. They would have no problem putting him under some sort of incarceration, whatever that looks like. I don't know, you know, but I think you're right. You know, house arrest is definitely one of those things.
I gotta say, I love the word compunction, and I appreciate you using that just now.
Sure, it's a good one.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the main topic of John Wayne Gacy.
John Wayne Gacy, an innocent man. No, I'm just kidding. Let me be very clear. John Wayne Gacy was definitely a serial killer. He murdered, he tortured, he raped no fewer than 33 young men. Between 1972 and 1978. For a period of time, he was like the most prolific serial killer on record. And prior to his capture and the indictment, the last most prolific serial killer was a guy by the name of Dean Corll, and he operated out of Houston. What's interesting is that there is a connection between Dean Corll and John Wayne Gacy. So just to give you a little background on John, he was born in March of 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. His crimes largely took place on record in Chicago, Illinois. He came from a family of 3 children, mom and a dad. His dad was incredibly physically and verbally abusive. Basically, from the time he was 4 years old, he was getting the crap beat out of him by his drunk dad. And he loved his dad, you know, so he sought his approval. It was very confusing. And I think that this experience as a child really informed his relationship with men as he grew up. And even more than his dad beating him up and getting drunk and treating him like garbage, when he was 7 years old, he got molested quite a bit by a friend of the family. And he kept it to himself. He didn't tell his dad because he was ashamed of it. And he thought that his dad wouldn't love him if he found out about it. So that definitely had an impact on him as well. He did have some run-ins with the law as he was growing up. Also had some strange health issues. He was diagnosed with a heart defect when he was in elementary school, and that heart defect caused him to gain weight. And as a result of that, he got teased by his classmates. And he ended up being hospitalized for a period of time on a number of occasions because he would have unexplained blackouts. And perhaps the blackouts were from his heart defect, or maybe it was some damage that had been done to him by his father when he was younger. But the doctors didn't really know what was going on for a while. And so that was one of the reasons they kept him in the hospital. Now, after that period, he ended up developing a blood clot in his brain. That was treated, and his father still continued to beat him. Basically, it shut John Wayne Gacy's emotional response down. He stopped responding to his father's negative attention. Like, he taught himself not to cry. He taught himself not to feel fear. He taught himself basically not to give his father any sort of response, because he just wanted to not provoke him and not give him any reason to come after him any longer. But he ended up getting hospitalized so much as a child that he found it difficult to continue on in school. He had so much work to catch up on. He ended up dropping out. And his father would then, of course, attack him for being stupid because he could not finish classes. Essentially, his dad was just like one of the biggest pieces of shit that you could possibly imagine. Now,
worse than John Wayne?
Like John Wayne, like the guy, the movie star?
No, like his. Say what you said again. Did I misunderstand you?
John Wayne Gacy's father was the biggest piece of shit.
Well, I feel like John Wayne Gacy, the serial raper, is the biggest piece of shit.
Well, he's not a dad. I mean, like, I'm saying, like, as a father, you can't get much worse.
He's a piece of shit father. Okay.
Yes, he's a piece of shit father. Yes.
Okay.
All right. So now, John Wayne Gacy was really unusual because, I mean, a lot of serial killers, like, they're kind of like twisted mentally, kind of drifters oftentimes, not necessarily like gainfully employed. Well, at this time, like, there had only been, I think Dean Corll was like one of the first identified serial killers. And at that time, he was only known as like a mass murderer. So John Wayne Gacy may have been on the cusp of like the coining of the phrase. I saw this show about the creation of the concept of serial killers. It was like these FBI agents, and they would go and talk to these people.
Mindhunter?
Mindhunter, yes. Yeah. That's really good show. That's a really good show.
I texted you about that, I think.
Did you?
Point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's a great show. I really liked it. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I like. I mean, like the real thought-provoking stuff. Yeah, but so anyways, John Wayne Gacy was active in the community. He owned a company. He had operated like a franchise as like an area manager. He was also fairly influential in the Democrat Party, and he was active in the JCs. And the JCs, it's that's a group that like works with young people to basically kind of like mold them and then help them grow up to be like contributing members of society.
It's like the JAYCEs.
Yeah. And the JCs in Chicago were also deeply connected to the Democrat Party. But when he was 18, he became involved with the Democrats, and he ended up becoming a precinct captain, which is just a step up from a precinct committeeman. And I just thought that was so funny because I'm always telling people to become a precinct committeeman.
Well, it's also interesting. Like, so he goes on to be a basically predator, right?
Yep.
And how many times have we seen like Democrat government officials or precinct officials or something get caught? Like, I feel like it's every week I see a story about some Democrat somewhere getting caught for trying to meet up with a child, and it happened to be one of these like predator catchers.
Yeah, no, it does. It happens quite often. And John was also very gregarious. He was said to have the gift of gab. He loved to talk to people, and he was very social. Obviously, his position within the Democrat Party afforded him the ability to, have all these interactions with people. And it's just it kind of flies in the face of the idea of what a traditional serial killer is. But his early prestige did not stop him from moving into these darker arenas. He apparently at some point went to Las Vegas, left Illinois, went to Las Vegas. He got a job with an ambulance service. And I don't think that he was an EMT. I just think that he was like an ambulance driver. And then he ended up getting transferred to a mortuary to work as an attendant. And he was known for spending the night at the mortuary. And he would sleep in the embalming room, which is like totally abnormal. I mean, yeah. So
what?
Yeah. Really kind of odd behavior.
Did he do anything to the bodies?
Well, we don't, I mean, he never admitted to that. But I mean, when you find out where he kept the bodies after he killed them, you might, start thinking there's a connection to this. But, well, okay. I guess that what we do know is that at some point, like his last night in the mortuary, he is said to have climbed into a coffin with a body. Okay. And I don't know what happened with that situation. Like he was not reported to have been like a necrophiliac or something. But I think that anybody who climbs into a coffin to get that close to a corpse, I mean, there's got to be some type of longing there. Now, here's the other thing too. It was the corpse of a teenage boy, and he had been molested. He wasn't married at this time. He did end up getting married, and he had
John Wayne was molested.
John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne is the movie actor.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's named after him. But I think that him getting into the coffin probably was like a precursor to developing this idea of wanting to have sex with men, but also feeling like he couldn't do that openly. And because he was molested, like there's something inherently wrong about it. And like, what can be more wrong than like, laying down with a dead body?
Can't think of many things.
No, I can't think of too many things. But so then he ended up going back to Chicago, and I guess he was only in Las Vegas for a couple of months. It seems like he really just wanted to get away from his dad. But when he ended up going back, he went to Northwestern Business College. This is another thing, that kind of set him up for success and sets him apart from other serial killers. And then he worked at a shoe company, and then he transferred to Springfield, Illinois, got into management. And then he began dating his girlfriend, who then became his wife. Her name was Mary Lynn Myers. And they didn't date for very long before they got married. I think, at this time, people were not openly gay in the sense that they are today. And you look at politics and you see a lot of guys who you just assume they're like Lindsey Graham, right? That dude's gay. Like, there's just no way. Like, I don't see it. And people get married so that they can have these faux relationships. They call them beards. Okay. Like Nancy Pelosi, probably a beard for Paul Pelosi, or maybe Paul Pelosi is a beard for Nancy Pelosi. But you would have these relationships to cover up your true needs. And it was also said that, that John Wayne Gacy and Marilyn were swingers, and that quite often he would offer his wife up to other guys so that they could have sex with her. I don't know how often that happened, but it was definitely something that was known about him. And I don't know.
My camera got
overheated.
As the battery died. No, I got the fan going.
Okay.
But I'm listening.
Yes. So, I considering his past, I tend to think that his desire to watch other men have sex with his wife probably had more to do with his desire to see men naked rather than, anything having to do with his wife. And it was after this marriage and his move to Springfield that he got involved with the JCs, and he rose up through the ranks pretty quickly. By 1964, he had been given some prestigious award. It was called the Key of Man. And then he ended up taking part in fundraising. He was appointed as the vice president of the Springfield chapter of the JCs. And he was also recognized as the third most outstanding JC in the state of Illinois. And this is like the highlight of his life right here. Like, he went from being just like a little picked on nobody with no self-esteem and no friends and getting beat up by his dad to being married, graduating from college, running multiple businesses, being parts of multiple organizations that people really respect. And people are telling him that he's a good person. And during this time, he also started to become preoccupied with the need to engage in sexual activity with young teenage boys. Obviously, that could potentially threaten everything that he's built. It wasn't long after this that he and his wife moved to Waterloo, Iowa, and this is where he was running some KFC restaurants. These were owned by his wife's father, and they also provided the Gacy's a place to live for free. And once they were in Waterloo, he joined the JCs there as well. He did the same thing. He rose through the ranks. And then by 1967, he's the outstanding vice president of that chapter. He also got onto the board of directors. However, while he was here, probably in an effort to suppress his need for sex with young boys, he started drinking a lot. He started using illegal drugs. This is where he starts openly swinging, starts meeting up with prostitutes, starts taking part in pornography. And this all kind of started to degrade the quality of his life and also his prestige in the eyes of those locals, including the places where he was working. So then this is where things start to get really dark. He had a basement at this house in Waterloo, and he turned it into like a hangout room, like a place where he could, have some beers, pool table, maybe throw on some stag films, invite some young boys over, and then he would invite them in, he would get them drunk, he would show them pornography, and then when they were under the influence, he would take sexual advantage of them. And generally, he would try to get them so drunk so that they couldn't protest or anything like that. So at this point, he's molesting young boys in his basement. He's doing drugs with them. He's doing drugs with the guys at the JCs. Marilyn, his wife, is, I guess, having children. I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought that he wasn't a father. But they had a boy in 1967, and then they had a girl a year later. And during this time, things were looking like perhaps it was going to be okay. Like he was finally going to be the kind of man that his father, never was for him. So John Wayne Gacy, one thing that does kind of put him in the same category as other serial killers is that they get to think that they're smarter than everybody else and that they can craft the perfect plan, which is going to allow them to live the life that they know that they shouldn't. And while he was doing all of this stuff, building this life with his family, also at the same time molesting young boys, he starts to plot and he starts to put together his ultimate plan of how he was going to essentially, live out his fantasies. And during this time, his attitude kind of started to change. And it was said that he became pushy. Instead of being humble about his accomplishments, he would brag about all of the awards that he'd gained and his positions. And some of the time he would start lying. He would just he would say things and claim things that just weren't true. And he started calling himself the Colonel. And he started insisting that people call him the Colonel. And he didn't have like a rank. He was never in the military. It was just, kind of an odd thing. So August 1967, this is when shit goes real bad. All right. He had hired this 15-year-old, a kid by the name of Donald Voorhees.
What year is this?
1967. This is right after his second child was born.
Okay.
Hires Donald Voorhees. He's got him doing odd jobs around the house. He met Donald Voorhees because Gacy knew his father. And Donald and his father were part of the JCs. So after he has Donald do a couple of jobs around the house, Gacy invites him down to the basement. He says, "Hey, I got some beer and I got some, titty movies. You want to watch them?" And then, they do. He got this kid super, super drunk, and then he forced him into having oral sex. I don't know who did what, but just know that that was what he was charged with. So he didn't get caught right away. And this kind of seemed to reinforce the idea for John Wayne Gacy that he could get away with this stuff. He started doing it more often. He did the same thing. He would hire young boys, bring them to the house, get them drunk, show them porn, and then do whatever he wanted. And then he started paying them for it to kind of, make it okay in his mind. Now, he also blackmailed several of them as a means to force them into sexual submission, like basically molesting them and then saying like, if you don't shut up, I'm going to tell everybody, what a pansy you are. And everybody's going to know that you're a faggot and, you're done. You're done. Jeez. And it worked. It worked for people. So it was 1968 when Donald Voorhees told his dad what John Wayne Gacy had done to him. And Mr. Voorhees was pissed. Okay. He immediately went to the police. As soon as he went to the police, another 16-year-old boy that was also molested by Gacy also went to the police. And so now it's starting to stack up. Gacy's got the pressure coming down on him from all sides. And Gacy gets arrested. He gets charged with oral sodomy of the 15-year-old and attempted assault on the other one. Now, he denied the charges, of course. He's not going to admit to something like that. And when he defended himself, he said that these were lies, that Voorhees' dad was trying to sabotage him. He wanted to take over the JCs, and he wanted to destroy Gacy.
And this is all before he's done any murders.
This is all the lead up to the murders. Okay. So, frequently what happens with these people is they develop these fantasies. Okay. Obviously, he gets into a coffin with a corpse, and that's enough to just like set the wheels turning. And he starts to kind of fashion this fantasy life of, like, okay, what can I do? What can I get away with? How close can I get to this? And, ultimately, after living through a series of fantasies and then watching it all come crashing down because these kids were alive, they lived to tell the tale. They went back and told their dads. They went and told the cops. I think he probably learned, hey, you know what? I can lay with the corpse and make sure that they never tell anybody about it. And so it leads up to this ultimate fantasy, which is, the rape and then murder of multiple young boys. So John Wayne Gacy he defended himself. The thing about it was that because he was so well liked, some of the people from the JCs believed him. They were like, oh God, John would never do anything like that. It's totally impossible. And then some people were like, like there's no way, like get rid of this guy, get him out of here. So he tried to intimidate Voorhees, tried to pay him off and stop him from testifying. And he ended up hiring another young boy who worked for him, an 18-year-old, gave him $300 and told him to beat Russell Voorhees up just before he's supposed to go. Yes, just before he's supposed to go in to testify. So just kick his ass so hard and tell him that he better not testify, and then maybe he won't show up in court. Well, he immediately went to the police and was like, John Wayne Gacy hired this person to beat the shit out of me. So the kid that he hired and gave the $300 to, he also gave up that kid, and that kid went to the police and he was like, okay, I copped to it. Mr. Gacy gave me the money. He told me to beat Voorhees up. And he said that, I needed to make sure that he didn't get the chance to testify. So then he was also charged with conspiracy assault. And by the time it was over, Gacy had to end up pleading guilty to sodomy, and he got a 10-year sentence.
Why does my camera keep going out, Zach? This is
you're sure that you've got the fan going on it?
Positive.
And you have the AC adapter plugged in, or you have a battery?
I have the adapter plugged in. Well, the battery's in there.
Okay, but it's not a battery. It's an adapter that goes into the battery slot.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll figure it out. You just keep talking.
All right.
If I have to switch to my other camera, I will.
Yeah, that seems like it should with the fan. You bought the fan that I told you to buy?
Yep.
Okay, make sure that the fan is turned up all the way because there are multiple settings on it. Like maybe you have it on the low setting. All right.
Yeah, you keep talking. I'm listening.
Yeah. So on December 27th of 1969, Gacy's father died from cirrhosis because he was drinking so much. And he was in prison at this point. He was already in a bad mental state, and he kind of had a breakdown. And but he ended up surviving. He did everything he was supposed to in prison. He did end up getting his GED, and he became a cook in prison. He took it very, very seriously. He got good behavior time, and he got out in October of 1971. That was just 2 years served of a 10-year sentence, and they let him out. He went on probation for 12 months, and while he was in prison, his wife filed for divorce. Now, she took the kids and she ran away. She said, "We are dead to you. We will never see you ever again." And of course, that was probably for the best for them. So Gacy has nothing when he gets out. So he goes back to Chicago because that's where he's from. And he tries to rebuild his life. He had to move in with his mom. He got a job as a cook because that's what he did in prison. And then he got a job as a construction contractor. So Gacy eventually was able to buy a home in Des Plaines, Illinois. It's about 30 miles outside of the city. And his mother lived in the house with him because that was part of his probation. And then in early February of 1971, no, this has got to be, no, this it's got to be in like 1972 because he got out in October of 71, and it was shortly after that. So, anyways, a couple months after buying the house, he ends up luring another young teenage boy to his home, and that kid almost gets raped, but he escapes and he went to the police. And then Gacy got charged with sexual assault again. And I don't know if this is Susan Booson's boyfriend or, the one that I was thinking of was a kid who he took to a lake and then he ended up letting him go. It was kind of weird, but especially because it was after he had already started killing kids. But anyways, the cops had to dismiss the charges because the kid never showed up in court. And basically, he got off on a technicality.
That's insane.
Yes. So it was 1972 when he made his first kill. And this was a 16-year-old boy by the name of Timothy Jack McCoy. He was sleeping at the bus terminal in Chicago, and he was planning to take the next bus out of the terminal, but it wasn't scheduled until the following day. And so Gacy approaches him and offers to give him a tour of the city. Plus, he says, hey, you can also stay at my house. It's much more comfortable than having to sleep here in the bus station. And now we know about this because Gacy admitted to this. So he claims that he awoke the following morning and he saw McCoy with a knife at his bedroom door, which, of course, makes him sound like the aggressor. Gacy then said he thought the teen intended to kill him, so he charged the kid. He got control of the knife, and then Gacy stabbed the teen to death. Now, it was only afterwards that he kind of got his wits about him, and he said that he realized the teen had a knife because he was preparing breakfast, and he'd gone to Gacy's room to wake him up. It wasn't that he wanted to kill him or anything like that. Now, how true that story is, we're never really going to know. But Gacy claims that this first kill, he didn't even intend to kill the kid. He brought him home, and he thought that, he was going to molest him, that he was going to probably do what he had done before. However, when he was killing the kid, he had an orgasm. And he said it was the most intense sexual pleasure that he had ever felt. And what did he do after that? Well, he never admitted to having sex with the body or doing anything else with it, but he took the kid and he buried him in the crawl space under his home. And, we're talking like wooden floorboards here, under a thin layer of dirt underneath the house. And again, by the time that John Wayne Gacy was arrested, there was some 33 bodies that were located under the house. And the whole place must have smelled like death, John. Just awful stuff.
So
now,
cameras here.
Say that again?
I'm just switching cameras, but I'm
okay.
Still listening.
All right. So basically for 6 years, from 72 to 78, John Wayne Gacy would go on to murder all of these boys. There were some that were buried under his house. There were some that were found in a river. There were some that were found in a park. I mean, mostly the bodies that were attributed to him were found inside the crawl space. And during this time, this is when he took on the identity of the clown. So he's sometimes called the clown killer, killer clown, something like that. And it was after he got caught that he was, sentenced, and he was on death row for 14 years, and he was executed at the age of 52. One thing that's really tragic about it is, although they have all those bodies, there are a number of them that they were never able to identify. And Gacy always hinted at the idea that there were likely more than the ones that they actually found at his house. The police, in their conversations with them, they said that he loved to play mind games. Like I said earlier, he liked to feel like he was smarter than everybody else. And although they found 33, he said that 45 sounded like a closer number. And typically what he would do would be to drive around. He would, look for young men who were of his profile, Sometimes they would be prostitutes. Sometimes they would be people looking for work. Sometimes they would be runaways. There was a whole bunch of different types. But the one thing they had in common is that they were all young men. And he was also inspired because, he chose the clown identity so that he would seem as if he was harmless, right? Like clowns are happy. Clowns are joyous. They show up at birthday parties or at the circus. And the inspiration that he got was from that other serial killer that I mentioned, Dean Corll. Dean Corll's name was the Candyman. And Corll was interesting because he used other young men to recruit others like themselves that would be brought to him and then raped and murdered. But not only raped and murdered, but also filmed, photographed, tortured, and perhaps even sold off to other people through a large organized pedophilia ring. I'll talk more about Dean Corll and some others that are associated with this larger group in a few moments. But John Wayne Gacy also had his own kind of lackeys. Now, these guys were never charged. There was a man by the name of Michael Rossi, and then another one by the name of David Cram. And the police in Chicago had said that there was overwhelming evidence that John Wayne Gacy had worked with an accomplice or multiple accomplices. And Gacy actually said that there were other people involved. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But at the time that he got arrested, there were four other suspects besides him. Three of the suspects were Michael Rossi, David Cram, and Philip Paskey. And then there was another guy by the name of John David Norman, who was connected through Philip Paskey.
Can I stop for a second before you get too far? So the bodies he buried in his crawl space, like right under the wood floor, was there like a stench in his house?
Absolutely. Oh, yes, absolutely. It smelled like death. There were 30 freaking rotten bodies right under his house. It wasn't a big house. Okay. Like the whole, you would go underneath the house and there's dead bodies literally everywhere. Just boom, boom, just lining the place.
Did he ever say why he chose to do it there?
I'm sure it was just, well, okay. I don't think that he said anything other than it was just a matter of convenience. But if he started getting sexual feelings for dead bodies or for death in some fashion while he was working at that mortuary, maybe that had something to do with it.
Gotcha.
But it also seems like very possible that perhaps at least some of these victims were kidnapped and killed as part of like a snuff film ring, which is part of that same pedophile ring. The whole thing. All right, so 33 was the full count. It was 26 that were underneath the house, and then the others that were in the river and in a park, in other places. So John Wayne Gacy had a couple of other likely co-conspirators. And one of the ways that he would lure people in was through his contracting company. And he had some of those guys that I mentioned were part of that contracting company. They worked for him. And one of those guys that I mentioned, David Cram, he testified against John Wayne Gacy at the trial that Gacy had paid him to dig these trenches in the crawl space, the same trenches that would then be used to store many of these victims. Oh. And the police were like, how are you digging graves under somebody's house? And you don't know. Also on top of that, Cram lived with Gacy, as well as a couple of other employees lived with Gacy as well. And so that, again, is the question. How do you live in a house where there's dozens of dead bodies and not know that there's dozens of dead bodies? So it's highly likely that at least a couple of these guys were perhaps involved with the procurement of some of these young men. The other one that I mentioned, Michael Rossi, actually, when Gacy was arrested, he was actually driving a car that was registered to one of John Wayne Gacy's victims. And he said that Gacy gave him the car when he got the job there, and it was like a perk of the job. But everybody was like, you know, I mean, well, he just gives you a car. I mean, like, it doesn't have a registration in it. You know, how are you going to get your plates? And, you know, he was just kind of playing dumb about the whole thing. But with the addition of those other people, we see some commonality between Dean Corll's case and then John Wayne Gacy's case. Both of them had a identity that was specifically designed to give them access to young boys. Oh, Dean Corll, I said he was the candy man. He actually had a candy company, and he would produce candy so that he could then offer it to young boys and entice them into his home, where he actually had a torture board. It was a piece of plywood where he would handcuff young men to it and then torture and rape them to death. And John Wayne Gacy said, you know, he got the idea of his tactics from Dean Corll. Dean had been active right before, basically up until the point that, you know, he was actually killed by one of the men that helped him to put together these scenarios with young boys. And when these two young boys that Corll was paying to have him bring other young boys, they were like, what do you want these kids for? And he was like, he said explicitly, I'm part of a pedophile ring that operates all over the country, and people will pay for these boys, and they'll pay to see them killed. They'll pay to watch them get killed. They'll pay to rape them. And these guys were just like, okay, as long as you're paying us, not a problem, not a problem. So a pretty disturbing scene, but
yeah, shit.
You know, I mean, like immediately, like the Franklin scandal comes to mind. The Finders come to mind. The Washington, D.C. White House call boys come to mind. You know, you think about all of these similar groups with similar desires and similar actions, and you start to wonder whether or not they're all connected in one way to one another. And there are connections between, you know, this case and then, you know, the Corll case and then John David Norman. With John Paskey, he was to John David Norman what Michael Rossi and David Cram were to John Wayne Gacy. There's a weird aspect here. John David Norman, he was considered the pedophile's pedophile. He, like, it was literally an unrepentant, sick man who, since the 1950s, had been victimizing young boys. And he actually ran a series of magazines, publications, one called the Delta Project, one called the Odyssey, another called Hermes. And these were all magazines that basically celebrated pedophilia and would offer profiles of young boys that people could pay to do whatever they wanted to. And this was published all throughout the entire United States. And when John David Norman finally got busted, the police raided his apartment, and inside his apartment, they found tens of thousands, if not over 100,000 index cards with the names, phone numbers, and addresses of customers from John David Norman's pedophile network. So there, you've got a direct connection between Dean Corll to John David Norman. Dean Corll said he was getting these boys for a pedophile network. John Wayne Gacy, oh yeah, they would also make their way up to Chicago, and John Wayne Gacy would become active after Dean Corll gets murdered. And then you've also got a direct connection inside the Gacy case to the henchmen of John David Norman. John David Norman had rental properties. One of his rental properties was rented in 1962 by Jack Ruby, the guy who shot Lee Harvey Oswald.
No way.
Yes. Totally wild. Totally wild. And John Wayne Gacy, when he was arrested, he asked how many others have been how many others have been arrested too. And they were like, well, what are you talking about? Just you. And he was like, well, I have associates. And they were like, well, who are your associates? And what did they do? And he was like, oh, okay, it's no big deal. I'm not going to tell you. Yeah, he admitted, like when he first got arrested, that there were other people involved.
John Wayne Gacy.
John Wayne Gacy, yes. He said there are other people involved in this. And he started talking about it. But then they basically just like whitewashed over it.
Why do you think that is? Or are you getting to that?
Well, I mean, so by the time he went back to Chicago and he kind of fixed up, I mean, he had served his time, et cetera, et cetera. There were still some people who thought that maybe, he didn't do what they had said he did. Also, maybe there were people who also did what he had done and they were working in government. So one of the things that he did when he went back to Chicago was that he was a parade director for the city of Chicago under Mayor Richard Daley. And he was actually recommended for that role by a man by the name of Colonel Jack Riley, who had some influence there.
Didn't he call himself Colonel?
Yes, he also called himself the Colonel. But Jack Riley was fully aware of Gacy's conviction for raping that teenage boy. What is also very odd, again, this is like, between 72 and 76. He was actually given Secret Service clearance to hang out with Rosalind Carter of Jimmy Carter, the First Lady, Rosalind Carter. The Secret Service were aware of his pedophilia and imprisonment, and they still gave him Secret Service clearance. So, I mean, I think it's quite clear that John Wayne Gacy had connections in high places, and he was still down with the Democrat Party, even though he had gone to prison for raping a young boy.
Do you think this connects to like the Bohemian Grove stuff?
I think it's all connected. Yeah. That's what I was getting at earlier. I mean, when you think about all these pedophile networks and these pedophile schemes, I mean, I have thought for a long time that all of these different things are all just different tentacles of the same octopus. I talk about this book, Secret Weapons, a lot. I mean, you did not read the John Podesta emails, did you? Like, we went over it on the show, but I mean, there's a different experience, John, when you're there in the moment. And like at that time, I read every single email from John Podesta. Okay. And like, I was deep in the nasty stuff that was in there, like connecting it to as many people as I could. All of the secret communications that they had, the code words and, the little nods that they would have to different things. And it's really obvious that, that stuff exists because these people want to be able to find each other. Okay. And like, they don't operate in secret. If this is the thing that you get your kicks doing, then you're going to find a way to do it. And you're also going to find people that you can do it with openly. Yeah. So, I had read that book, Secret Weapons, and that really led me to the conclusion that our intelligence community, not only here in America, but also Israel and, probably all other first world nations, I'm sure you've heard about terrible things that NATO has been involved in, that the United Nations has been involved in. I mean, pedophilia and child trafficking extends throughout the entirety of the world. Okay, it's everywhere. And the government uses it as a tool to control people, both in government and then in an espionage type sense. Okay. Either you've got somebody who's a pedophile and they'll do whatever you want because you provide them children and they enjoy it, or you can blackmail someone with the threat that their life is going to be ruined because you're going to call them a pedophile. And it doesn't really matter to the CIA or to whatever other agency or whatever company it might be. Like, can you imagine, like, this is what somebody likes, and they force somebody else to engage in that type of behavior, they're probably going to get off just on the fact that they're making somebody dip their toes into this world. They're also going to get off on the power that they're going to have over somebody else, blackmailing them with the knowledge that they could potentially ruin their lives.
It's hard for me to fathom that. I mean, I know it happens. I know you're describing it perfectly. It's hard for me to comprehend that.
Well, I mean, it is extremely difficult to accept that this is reality. And when I learned this was 10 years ago, okay? When I really understood this, it almost broke me. Okay, like I was despondent. Like you can't bring this stuff up at parties, right? I mean, you can't talk to people about this. They have to already know about it. And the people who knew about it, we were so fucked, so broken in the head, just realizing how much evil is around us. I mean, it is enough to destroy you. And that was a big part of why I had such a big problem with drugs and alcohol, because I could not reconcile my place in this world, knowing that this stuff was going on and knowing that I was powerless to do anything about it. It was like you're cursed with the knowledge of everything that's happening in the world, and you're just standing there watching it happen, knowing that you can do nothing about it. Like you just have to exist within the shit. And that was the most painful thing that I could imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I consider it's a curse and a blessing. Like that I wasn't awake during all that stuff coming out, because I mean, yeah, I'd probably be a lot further along in my awakening journey if I had been awake and paying attention and going through the Podesta emails stuff at that time. But I still am yet, like pretty much the one episode we did on the Podesta emails.
Yeah.
That's about the furthest I've gone into that rabbit hole. And that honestly was enough for me. I don't know if I could take going down any further. Like it's, I don't know. It's creepy shit.
So Susan,
there's one comment in the chat. Sorry. Before we get to Susan, it was, oh shoot, who's that? Q Digger. Gacy admitted to a certain number, but not all. Why? Because he didn't kill the others.
Exactly. Yes. And this goes back to what I was saying about him having accomplices. So I will get to that point, and his lawyers eventually came out after he was put to death and said, we're convinced that John Wayne Gacy had accomplices. So eventually John Wayne Gacy from prison admits that he didn't kill all these people and that there were definitely other people there. Now, the one man that I know, it was a 19-year-old who was a male prostitute, Robert Donnelly. I don't know if this is Susan Bouson's boyfriend or not, but he was tortured by Gacy at his home, and he escaped, and he went to the police. And Gacy, when the police came to speak with him, he said, oh, you know, he's just my gay lover, and it was just rough sex. And so the police let it go. But yes.
What year was that?
This must have been like 75 or 76. I mean, it was close to the end. What's interesting is that the same thing happened with Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer had like a young Filipino boy that he had actually drilled a hole in his head, trying to turn him into a sexual slave. And that kid broke free, and he ran out into the street without a shirt on. And he like went up to the cops and was like, you know, he like was not all there. He was like drugged and things were bad. I want to say that Dahmer was pouring Drano into his skull cap. And Dahmer came out and he was like, oh, you know, it's just my boyfriend. You know, we're having a rough night, you know, please, you know, let me take him back home. And the cops were like, oh, it's just some gay stuff. And so they let him go and he took him back. And Dahmer also kept bodies in his house. He kept pieces of bodies in his house. His neighbor said that it smelled like death. And yeah, it was a bad situation. So, I mean, it's kind of, you know, similar to these other cases. But there was a 15-year-old by the name of Robert Priest, and he went missing, and the police started taking a second look at John Wayne Gacy because, I'm sorry, Piest, Robert Piest, no R. Piest had been talking with Gacy about getting a job at his construction company at PDM Contractors. And then all of a sudden, Piest disappears. And there had been another couple of boys who it turned out had been preparing to go for an interview for a job. Gacy would do this frequently, lure them in, and then he would take care of them, basically. So Piest had a job. He was working at a pharmacy in Des Plaines. His mother had seen him, and she knew that he was going to talk to Gacy about a new job. And it was also reported by witnesses at the scene that Gacy's truck was outside the pharmacy, and then the kid disappears. Now, the pharmacy owner was questioned about this, and he was slightly evasive, the police said. He did not want to give any information about John Wayne Gacy, and he didn't want to give John Wayne Gacy's address. Now, I haven't learned if John Wayne Gacy knew this pharmacist, like in a social way, if they were in the JCs together, if they were in the DNC together, or if John Wayne Gacy was a customer there. All I know is that that somehow the pharmacist would have had John Wayne Gacy's address. So there was a connection. All right. Now, I'm not going to say that the pharmacist was involved in some, disgusting behavior, but I mean, certainly, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's something going on there. This guy's name was Phil Torf. So if anybody wants to dig on Phil Torf, Torf, then you can go ahead and do that. So the police ended up putting surveillance on Gacy, and he learned about it, and he ended up basically bringing him coffee and donuts and stuff, and trying to make friends with them. He thought that if he could get them off of his back if he made them believe that he was a good guy and he wasn't going to kill anybody. Well, the only problem is that the police smelled an odor of rotting human corpses coming from inside of his house. And the police got close enough to be able to identify that smell. I mean, it's a fairly particular odor. They know about this. And John Wayne Gacy goes into his house to see if he's got, anything that might help them in the search for Robert Piest. And when he went into his house, I guess that he found a receipt belonging to Piest's girlfriend. And he ended up giving it to the police. And then basically, Gacy admitted that he had previously attempted to have oral sex with this kid. And then the kid became frightened. And the kid also was, I guess, going to report John Wayne Gacy for, having molested him. And so he admitted to having killed him and then thrown him in the river. And then he also claimed to have multiple personalities at a certain point. He had so many different things that he would say to the police. And so I think this might be why the cops didn't necessarily take him seriously when he suggested that he had accomplices, because he had already said that he had multiple personalities. He had something called the 4 Johns. He had also used this as part of an unsuccessful insanity plea.
4 Johns?
The 4 Johns. Yes. Yes. Now, a John is also a term for a guy who's paying for sex from a prostitute.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But Gacy ended up getting arrested, and he confessed to 5 murders. What's kind of interesting is that there are no recordings. There's no transcripts of these confessions. And the cops claim that they didn't record him because they thought that he wouldn't talk if he saw a tape recorder.
Isn't it like illegal to not record that stuff now?
I don't know. I think that it's probably protocol to go ahead and record it. I mean, it seems like every single interview room has, cameras and audio equipment going 24 hours a day. But, this is the mid 70s. It seems smart to have a recording of, especially something like this with how many dead bodies there are and, all of them being young men. But where there's kind of a wrinkle. Now, we've already shown that John Wayne Gacy had connections to high-level Democrats. The state's attorney in this case did not allow any record of his confession to be used as details of his modus operandi in his defense. And I'm thinking it's highly likely that his recorded confession would have involved the implication of other people, multiple others that were working with him. And this way, with no official record of his confession and only the word of the police, to be used in testimony against him, they could blame every single murder on John Wayne Gacy. They could wrap it up with a neat little bow, and that would be it. Now,
all the bodies were in his crawl space too.
And plus there were but again, there were 7 other bodies that were not in his house that were attributed to him. Here's the other thing: at least one of those bodies had been murdered when it was confirmed John Wayne Gacy was out of town.
Oh, no way.
Yes. So I'm saying that the chances of there not being any accomplices is 0.0%. There definitely was. Now, here's the other thing. Gacy, a number of years later, when he was giving an interview to CBS Chicago, he actually denied that he had even confessed to the murder of Robert Piest. And he said that he had killed some of the victims, but not all of the victims. And he specifically claimed that Piest had been killed by someone else, but not him, and that he had simply disposed of the body. Now, that gentleman who escaped, what was his name?
Donnelly?
Donnelly, yes. Donnelly, when he spoke to the police, he actually said that there was somebody else in the house when John Wayne Gacy had been molesting and torturing him. We don't know who that other person was, but I think that I don't think he was wrong. I think that he was probably correct.
Well, it makes sense too you can close up a bunch of open cases by pinning all these things on one guy, the fall guy.
Well, guess what? I'm just about to tell you about one such case. As I said, several of the bodies had never been identified. And one of the cases was definitely an opportunity for the police to just wrap up an unsolved case. There was a runaway by the name of Harold Wayne, and he was counted among the dead. And turns out he was actually found alive in 2011. So he had been officially dead. The police said John Wayne Gacy killed him. And then in 2011, he shows up totally alive. And he's not even dead. Lazy police work, or intentionally bad police work, kind of like intentionally bad U.S. Secret Servicing.
Hold on, John.
When you're the law, you can do whatever you want.
Harold Wayne, a misidentified victim of John Wayne Gacy.
Yep.
Contrary to initial assumptions, Harold Wayne Lovell, 19-year-old man who vanished in 1977, was not a victim of Gacy serial killings. Instead, he was found alive and living in South Florida.
Just beach bumming it up. There was another one, a kid by the name of Michael Marino. He was also misidentified by the police, but it turns out that they had the identification wrong. So I don't know that he was found alive, or if they were just able to determine eventually that the body they thought was him was not him. But it was another example of the police just trying to tie up a bow and to just, get it over with. So,
well, that throws doubt on every single one of those victims.
It does. But he admits to having killed at least some of them. And even if he didn't kill all of them, he was present and involved in perhaps the majority of the other ones that were killed, even if by somebody else.
Well, I'm saying the identities of the victims.
Well, I mean, some of them I'm certain were positively identified. I mean, they were known to have been in communication with John Wayne Gacy. Maybe they identified them by, perhaps a wallet they had on them, or maybe the clothing that they were wearing. I mean, who knows? I mean, your point is well taken. I mean, this was sloppy police work. And yes, it does call into question much of the investigation. But let's talk a little bit about his time on death row. This is when he really started getting into the idea of other killers. He actually put together something called a victim book while he was in prison. And he created it with the help of an unknown person, somebody who was obsessed with serial killers and became friends with John Wayne Gacy, a person who went by the name of Chris Lewis. Chris Lewis is not his real name, but Chris did the background and the research and helped and brought this stuff together. And the victim book was like a scrapbook, basically, with news and police reports, with personal and identifying information about several of the victims. Now, some of those people in that book, Gacy claimed were killed while he was out of town. I can find 100% proof positive John Wayne Gacy was out of town when this guy was killed. But he also said that he didn't know who all the victims were. And one of the reasons that he was trying to put this victim book together was so that he could find out who actually killed them. So who knows? But he definitely killed some boys, and he definitely hit him in his crawl space. And that's just something you can't get past. So it was in 1994 that he got a new defense team. His original defense team basically railroaded him. They worked with the police to make sure that he would just plead guilty to all 33 murders and get the trial over as soon as possible.
Dude, have you ever watched Making a Murderer on Netflix?
No, I don't think
you should. You should, because that's like it's crazy.
Okay.
That just reminded me of that. But
wait a second. Tell me the plot. This is like a reality show, right? It's like
no, it's a true story in Wisconsin. Yeah, it's a documentary where they go through this case. This guy Stephen Avery.
Okay. Yes, Stephen Avery. I did watch that. I watched that years ago, and then I never watched the second season. I heard that the second season kind of made it seem like he actually might have done it.
Oh no, I don't. I totally disagree.
Okay, well, I'll have to watch it.
It proves it even more that he didn't. But yeah, you should.
I definitely remember Stephen Avery, and it was pretty clear that. You know what? I'm sorry. I'm just they went after his nephew too, didn't they?
Yeah, and that's the part where his confession, like he's this guy with a super low IQ, 16. Right. The police totally. Yeah. That interview was so coercive. It was disgusting. But they're both still in jail. But
yeah,
when you watch the second season, and they go through all this other evidence and basically, in my opinion, prove that he didn't do it.
Okay.
Anyway, but that reminded me of what did you even just say?
They railroaded him. The
attorneys helped.
The defense team helped the prosecution make sure that Gacy would just plead guilty to all 33 murders.
That's what they did to Stephen Avery's nephew. His defense attorney ended up getting tossed up by the judge because of all the bullshit he did, trying to help get the case on Stephen Avery.
Wasn't the prosecutor also found to be having sex with prostitutes or something like that?
Yeah, he's sexting his clients.
Oh, that's right. He was the prosecutor. He was sexting defendants.
Yes.
Oh, what a scumbag.
Yeah.
And I feel like he had some fake teeth, some really white fake teeth.
Maybe. Yeah, he definitely did. Yeah. Okay. You'll have to rewatch that series.
I will. So you know what I did watch, which was really good, was the one about the guy with the pizza guy with the bomb around his neck. This is a great case. I don't remember the name of the show, but I knew about the case before they made a show about it. And
it's a documentary.
It's a documentary series, and I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix. But it might be Mastermind or something about the face of evil. And look up the pizza delivery driver neck bomb.
Is it Evil Genius?
Evil Genius. That's it. So good. One of the most twisted cases I've ever heard of.
I haven't seen that, but I'm gonna have to check that out now.
All right. So anyways, his original legal team did not really provide adequate defense. Didn't really matter though, because he's very close to being put to death at this point. And he got a new defense team in 1994. They went through all of the evidence, and they found that he was actually out of town during 16 of those 33 murders. So they were able to put that together, and they attempted to use this new evidence in a last-minute bid to get a stave of execution. Now, the prosecution tried to counter against that by pointing out that John Wayne Gacy had drawn a map showing where all the bodies were under the house. But the thing is, knowledge of where those bodies are doesn't necessarily mean that he killed all of them. Might make him complicit in the hiding of the bodies. But it doesn't matter because the judge was like, whatever, this dude's going to the gas chamber, I think it was. So the people that he had worked with that were mentioned earlier, the Michael Rossi and David Cram, who worked for him, John Paskey, who was the henchman for John David Norman, the idea is that all four of these men were the ones who were actually committing those other murders. Like, they would go to Illinois, perhaps when John Wayne Gacy was out of town. They would use his home as like a torture and perhaps sex den. And then, you know, John Wayne Gacy would maybe help them out with disposing of the body. The first three, John Paskey, David Cram, and Michael Rossi, all of them worked for John Wayne Gacy at his PDM construction company. But John David Norman lived, you know, he had been in a number of different states. Colorado, I think, is the place where, you know, he had spent some time. I know that he went to a couple of mental hospitals in California. But long story short, all four of them had their own keys to the house. And even more than that, there were a total of 12 keys that existed for the home. So that means that John Wayne Gacy and these four, that's 5 keys, but that leaves 7 other keys unaccounted for, which could give other people access to the home to perhaps engage in the same sort of sick, ritualistic, pedophilic behavior. So, but we'll never know. Anyways,
it kind of makes you wonder if any of that stuff will ever get disclosed too, you know, like.
Well, I never even told you what happened to all of the note cards that John David Norman had at his home with all of the names, addresses, and phone numbers of the people who were clients of his Delta project, which actually exists to this day in a different form. I was actually kind of freaked out when I saw this. Let me show you this. The Delta project was his pedophile ring, and he catered to people all over the United States, basically selling access to young teenage boys. And I'm not suggesting that the current Delta project does that in any way, but I just found it interesting that the current Delta project is a kind of similar organization in that it caters to young, at-risk young men of color. So this project exists to break the generational cycle of incarceration by reconnecting youth of color and their families to community relationships through mentorship, coaching, and storytelling. I don't want to get sued. I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that this Delta project is in any way connected to John David Norman's Delta project, but this is another 501c3. And this is another.
Why use that same name?
It's another pattern that we see in these groups is that they start organizations, philanthropic mission, and then they use it so that they can, you know, molest and, you know, and murder kids. Not saying that this Delta project does that. I'm just saying that this fits the profile of the original Delta project, and it just happens to have the same name, and it also has something to do with young men who are at risk, who maybe people wouldn't pay attention to if they disappeared in the same way that some of these other young boys disappeared.
Yeah, but that is interesting. But again, we are not saying that. And if I disavow, I disavow.
All right. So, John David Norman, when his apartment was raided and they found all of the note cards. Hold on. I actually have an article. Oh, dang it. This is all right. So back in August 16th of 1973, that's when the raid on his apartment in Dallas was conducted. And they learned at that time that this homosexual ring, they called it, really it was a pedophile child trafficking ring, was discovered when they did this raid because they found all of those note cards. Okay. Now, again, this is right after Dean Corll, the previously most prolific serial killer in the nation, with a similar profile to John Wayne Gacy, who admitted to capturing these young boys to provide them for a pedophile ring that operated across the country. This is right after he was killed. John David Norman's apartment is raided. They find evidence of the child trafficking ring with the note cards, which identify all of the clients all around the country. And ask me what the cops did with the note cards.
Probably lost it, misplaced it.
No, they gave them to the State Department. The State Department. And guess what the State Department did with them?
Probably nothing.
They burned them.
What?
They burned them, John. They destroyed them.
And they admitted to it?
Yeah, they admitted to it. Yep.
Why? Why did they burn it?
It's the State Department. I mean, they said that they made a mistake. They didn't think it was needed. So they burned it. They burned it to incinerate it, and it did not exist anymore. What's interesting is there was also a congressional subcommittee investigation that was launched to find out why the State Department would burn those tens of thousands of index cards. As a result, this was the Senate Juvenile Delinquency Subcommittee and the House Crime Subcommittee, and it was opened after the Chicago Tribune and their reporters testified about the State Department action. The State Department was put on blast by the Chicago Tribune. Only then did the congressional committees figure out what they had done. Even more than the State Department destroying evidence of a national pedophile network, likely that was involved in snuff films, child rape, child pornography, some of the most heinous things that you can possibly imagine. My question was, why did the local police take this evidence of a national child trafficking ring and give it to the State Department? Why didn't they give it to the FBI?
And why didn't they make copies?
Why didn't they give it to the state police?
Why would they not make copies before doing anything with it?
Well, I think the obvious answer here, John, is that they didn't want this to go any further. The cops, they wanted a single person that they could wrap up in the same way they wrapped up John Wayne Gacy. This guy, John David Norman, an unrepentant pedophile, you know, that's what they had on him. Okay. And they had the knowledge of his various groups, the Delta, Operation Delta, the Odyssey Foundation. When he got busted, there were prominent people and even federal employees connected to Washington, D.C., who were in his list, in those note cards. So they looked at that and they were like, holy shit. Like, I don't want to investigate this any further. So rather than passing it on to the appropriate law enforcement agency, they passed it on to the State Department. And the State Department said, you know, fuck this. We're going to get rid of this. We do not want our people to be connected. So after they hand over all this information, Norman flees Chicago, and then he sets up another ring. Okay, this was the Odyssey Foundation in Dallas. After that is when he sets up the Delta Project. And then again, he immediately begins luring these young boys into prostitution, transporting them around the country, producing magazines with their pictures and their profiles so his old clients can hire these boys from John David Norman. And then finally in 1978, just as right around the same time that John Wayne Gacy is getting arrested, the police arrest him. Here, now that he's been operating for 5 more years, the police find another 100,000 note cards with, again, all of his clients from across the United States. What's really interesting is that one of the victims of the Franklin scandal, Paul Bonacci, he was mentioned in a similar ring that was operating out of Chicago that was also connected to the Franklin scandal in Omaha. And this guy ended up just continuing to do his thing. In the 1980s, he made a child pornography magazine in Pennsylvania called Handy Andy. And he got busted again. He jumped bail again. He kept running. And then finally, he got caught in California. He got put into a mental hospital. He spent some time there. His lawyer said this guy does not feel bad about what he's doing. He will always be a danger to society. You should lock him up and throw away the key and never let him see the light of day again. So after some time, they end up letting him go. He goes out on the street, and within a couple of days, maybe, he's caught giving a sexually explicit note to a bag boy at a supermarket, like a shopping market, trying to lure him into the same type of arrangement that he had with all these young boys previously. And they arrested him. I want to say this was like 2002. And they immediately arrested him, put him back into a different hospital for the criminally insane. And he died 2 years later.
Insane.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that pretty much wraps it up. But ultimately, I think that this is about as obvious a connection you can get to what, many people consider the deep state as I think you can get. I mean, the State Department is the, equivalent of the Central Intelligence Agency. It allows them to operate within the borders of the United States, to have diplomatic missions in every country where they have diplomatic relations. And then the CIA can operate out of those diplomatic missions. They can also operate out of their NGO partners, which have probably greater access than the than the Department of State does. And through those various networks, they offer children just like this to the people that they control and to the people that they need to control. And this is what is the true measure of value to our deep state. This is what this country and the entire Western world runs on, is the currency of children. And it's horrible.
It's disgusting. And it's clear, or it seems clear, that John Wayne Gacy had accomplices.
Absolutely.
Man, that's nuts. It's a wild story. I knew of John Wayne Gacy, but I've never looked into him. And that just baked my noodle, man. That was nuts. Yeah, we got some boosts and rants to get through here.
Let's do it.
And I like this first one a lot. It's from Bubblehead, a boost. $17 from August 2nd says, this Florida boy was in Arroyo Grande, California, 2,500 miles away from home, when I spotted a Baseless Conspiracies t-shirted dude. CJ Bird and I became instant brothers. We'll see him again at Gart Myrtle Beach. Lesson here is buy and wear your Badlands merch.
That's awesome, dude.
That's amazing.
That's so cool.
And I just want to prove that I didn't make that up. That is on our website.
I got to get a Baseless Conspiracy shirt, dude.
I do too. And I think Andy 5x5 is going to be putting up some merch for us here soon. But yeah, thank you, Bubblehead. That is a cool one. Get your merch, guys. It's on our website. And all of our, by the way, all of our Gart merch, I'm going to have some there, but you can also get other stuff. Probably got to order soon if you're coming and want to wear it. Otherwise, we'll hopefully have some for you when you get there. I think this one, yeah, fascinating show about time travel. Time travel must be impossible for us to survive. I can't think of anything scarier than time travel tech in government hands. Sending this from this timeline. Let's see if the timeline holds for you to read it. I like that. JJSCH or Shradi says that. Okay. And now we got some rants. First up, we have Snowcat Operator. I always look forward to Monday nights on Badlands.
Hold on. People are saying my camera's blurry. My camera, it hasn't really, because I am broadcasting in full 1080. Hold on.
It looks like you're broadcasting 10.80.
Wow. I don't have an option for 1080. The highest option is 720.
Oh, maybe that's because my camera is broadcasting lower now.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's it. Well, no, I mean, I feel like I was always. Can you change yours to 1080?
I can try. Yeah, it says I can't because I'm already live in 720.
Okay. Well, sorry, guys.
Yours is significantly less than 720.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, because I'm full 4K.
Yeah. Anyway, Bumlin B says, Zach, did you find your hard drive yet? I think we covered that.
We did. I said that one. Yeah.
People are saying in the chat maybe it's a tropical storm above you.
No, I mean, I've got fiber, and there's no interruption to the fiber connection.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we had S. Booson's rant about her boyfriend being the only known survivor, which is still nuts. Another one from her says, a colleague of mine met and played cards with John Wayne Q. Gacy in prison, or JWQG. I'm assuming that's the same. Gacy
I think
in prison.
Maybe the Q was a typo.
Yeah, while doing experiments on prisoners, he said Gacy was clearly possessed.
I wouldn't doubt it. I didn't even say his clown identity. It was Pogo the Clown. I should have shown a picture of him too, because it's frightening. Hold on.
I mean, if you want to find it,
I got. I forgot another connection. Brian Peck. Brian Peck, who worked at Nickelodeon. He was the Nickelodeon producer that raped Drake Bell from Drake and Josh, and was good friends with the guy who what's his name, you guys? Who's the guy from Nickelodeon that people were making all kinds of videos about him? They did that show Quiet on the Set. Dan Schneider. He was good friends with Dan Schneider. Brian Peck was pen pals with John Wayne Gacy and proudly displayed a John Wayne Gacy painting of himself as Pogo the Clown. Here is a painting that John Wayne Gacy did, a self-portrait of himself as Pogo the Clown.
What?
Yeah.
Dude.
So Brian Peck, unrepentant pedophile, just happened to be friends with another unrepentant pedophile. And just goes to show you that these people, again, are looking for opportunities. Oh, gosh, here. This is John Wayne Gacy as Pogo.
Gosh.
Yeah. I mean, totally looks like a serial killer, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sleep tight, kids.
Unreal. Okay. Candy 08. I maintain that the Gurinder Chadha film Bend It Like Beckham, I don't want to say the name. Anyway, in 2002 was a very early secret warning in regards to the migrant problem in UK that we are seeing today. Watch it and you will understand. Interesting observation. I haven't actually seen that movie though. So Sabro Bedeau says The Office is for retarded faggots. And I disavowed the faggot part, but I can be a little retarded sometimes. So that part I agree with. Texas Jules. So Israel and the U.S. have no extradition agreement. Is that why all these congressmen and women have dual citizenship with Israel? Got it. For sure.
Yeah, that could very likely be it. Yeah.
Bumblin B says, if Trump were to be sentenced and we believe Devo's plan, the plan would absolutely be in place if he were to be placed in a cell with Secret Service. My point was, like, yeah, I agree he'd be taken care of, but the fact that the assassination attempt happened and Secret Service it's like being pinned on them, I could see that being a reason for them not to allow him to be in a prison cell and instead do something like house arrest at Mar-a-Lago.
Here's the other thing, guys. Like, even if Devo is real, it doesn't mean that there aren't bad people out there who are still trying to murder President Trump. I mean, if anything, I think that shows you that no matter how much control might be going on, there are always going to be factors that you simply can't account for. It's like Donald Rumsfeld, the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. You don't know what you don't know.
Yep. 1020.
Wait, I think you missed one. You missed one.
Oh, camel hat guy?
No, 2812 VPJ.
I read that one earlier.
Did you?
So
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yep. Camel hat guy. What if Trump goes to prison and he initiates prison reform? He goes into prison and asks, what do you do all day? This isn't productive and adds actual reform to prisons. Education, job skills, etc.
I mean, I'm sure.
I mean, can't we just have Kim Kardashian tell us what we need to do with the prison? Isn't that what happened? 1027JS, clowns are creepy. Gacy is a sick puppy. Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
And yeah, that picture is gonna haunt me, bro. Don't put it up again. Put it away. Put it away.
That's what she said.
Bread Hour. Zach, you are doing the Lord's work by putting a spotlight on all this. God bless you.
Thank you, Bread Hour.
I agree. You're doing a great job. Bumblebee, if you see anyone with Badlands merch, go say hi, make a friend. That you should. Gamble 808. Thank you, Zach, for going deeper than any of the rest of us want to go. John, thanks for making that happen. Yeah, I really don't do much on this show except for like be fascinated by your wealth of knowledge.
Well, thank you, John.
These topics, it's insane. And I do have a thread going on Twitter, guys. That's how we ended up choosing tonight's episode. So go find it. And if you have any suggestions, we have covered it. This is our 93rd episode. We've covered quite a bit.
I'm starting to get nervous. Like we're gonna run out of conspiracies at some point, and we're just gonna have to start drawing from whatever we see on a regular basis.
I know. Like for a while there, I was like, "There's no way we'll ever run out," and now it's like, "Holy shit!" Like I bet 75 to 80% of the suggestions were stuff we've already covered. Probably more than that.
Yeah, it's true.
So anyway, Salt Muncher ODA, Zach, you're pretty smart. I wonder if you were smart enough to explain to BB how to change his smoke detector batteries without setting them off. Trying to lighten the mood.
I mean, is that a problem for him?
I didn't know that, but apparently it wouldn't surprise me. Maybe his wife can show him how to properly change batteries.
Well, she is a smart cookie. Yeah,
she's a smart one in the family. Okay, that's all of them.
Oh gosh.
Cool.
All right, you guys. And I do want to ask you to please go to that thread, put conspiracy theories on there that you want to hear us talk about. And I also would suggest that you go back through our catalog of conspiracies and see what's in there so that you know what we've covered. And, it may be at some point in the future, like new information comes out and we get to go back and revisit something. Or, maybe perhaps, I come across new information and I think it's important, but, there, at the same time, there are also things out there that, I don't know that we'd be able to, maybe I could fill up an hour and a half with anything, but I'm just worried that there are some out there that I may not be able to do like a comprehensive show on because there won't be enough to go on. I suppose that, I don't know. I have yet to try. Maybe I'm going to push myself. Next week, I'll try to do something that I think I won't be able to do.
Okay. And maybe at some point, Zach, we get to a point where we just talk about whatever is going on the show. And then, and then if something pops up, we do another conspiracy. So,
okay. Yeah.
We'll see. There's still some out there. Right? There's got to be some more stuff we can talk about. But yeah, the thread, I'll put the thread on in the chat here. And you guys can go throw your suggestions in.
And if you guys wouldn't mind, tag me on Twitter when you make those comments so that I'll see it because it's, John is a prolific tweeter. So
I can send you the thread too.
Okay. But I also want to get interactions and notifications on Twitter.
Okay, I should probably have tagged you in that original thread.
Yeah, Dick. People don't even know I have a Twitter.
Yeah, you should tweet more. I tagged you tonight.
What's that?
I did tag you tonight.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, like what we're doing right now, it takes a lot of work off the air, you guys. So I just don't have time to spend on Twitter. Like back when it was, I had an easier workload. It just made more sense. But now I just don't have the time to do it. So I don't know. I like this.
Oh, also, guys, get your GART virtual tickets. I think Wednesday. I don't know what time yet. I have to wait for my mom to let me know for sure that she can watch the kids. But we're probably going to do like a virtual GART live stream or whatever, exclusive for ticket holders. So you get your virtual tickets. You can hang out with us for a little bit and we can talk about whatever. So that's at badlandsmedia.tv/events. And with that, I think we will see y'all when we see you. Thanks, Zach.
Peace.